Item 10B, receive a report and provide direction regarding expiration of moratorium on the establishment and operation of medical marijuana collectives. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the issue tonight, I believe this is on, yes, is what action to take, if any, about the city's moratorium on medical marijuana establishments. And as you know from the staff report, our current moratorium expires on the 25th of September of this year. So we're looking for direction at tonight's meeting so we can bring forward to you any new ordinance for introduction at the August 9th meeting with an adoption scheduled for September 13th, since as you know, you don't have a second meeting in August. This is a complex and still changing field. However, the vast majority of cities and counties that have considered this have either adopted a moratorium or, on the other hand, enacted a permanent ban on such establishments. It is important to realize that a ban on establishments, including, however defined, collectives, cooperatives, dispensaries, does not affect the right of a qualified individual, that's somebody with a medical condition, to cultivate and use the allowed amount of marijuana for medical purposes, and so that's defined in state law. So whatever action is taken, patients still have a right to possess and use medical marijuana under California law. And that's because the state law that the voters adopted still provides a defense to a criminal charge of possession of marijuana. It also appears unlikely that the federal government would enforce its laws, because of course marijuana is still illegal under federal law. It's unlikely they would enforce their laws against patients who use the specified amounts of marijuana for medical purposes. It seems much more likely that the federal government would target dispensaries or other establishments that are either selling or distributing marijuana, either for medical but also for perhaps non-medical purposes. Chief Telford has provided us with an update to his October 2009 memo, and that update outlines some of the secondary effects of allowing medical marijuana establishments. So what's a secondary effect? Well, he's documented that criminal activity has occurred at medical marijuana establishments in San Mateo, and in at least 4 instances, that same kind of criminal activity was occurring in San Bruno at residential locations where marijuana was being cultivated. There's also similar evidence from communities around the state. What does this mean? Well, we think it means that allowing any type of establishment that distributes marijuana for medical purposes or otherwise does create a real and serious risk of nearby criminal activity. And the chief's available to answer any questions about that if you have any. So in the staff report, I've outlined 4 options for you. Let me just briefly go through them. The first option is to adopt an ordinance prohibiting any establishments. Qualified patients, as I've indicated before, could still grow and use marijuana in the allowed amounts for medical purposes, as allowed by state law. As also noted in my report, the council could revisit the issue if the legal landscape changes. The second option is to allow and regulate establishments such as San Francisco does, such as San Mateo does, San Mateo County and a few other cities. So the police department and community services department would become involved in both permitting and enforcement of that ordinance. A third option is to consider adopting a new moratorium because this one expires in September, as I've indicated. But under state law, that actually requires some new facts and circumstances different from the ones that supported the first moratorium. It's not entirely clear that such facts and circumstances exist, but if you're interested in that option more intently, we could evaluate that option and bring it back to you for review. The final option is to just let the moratorium expire. Well, what would that mean? Well, right now, medical marijuana establishments are currently not permitted in any zoning district. And there's case law that says if they're not specifically permitted, they are prohibited. So therefore, regardless of the moratorium, in San Bruno right now, if the moratorium were to expire tomorrow, the city could take the position that medical marijuana establishments are prohibited. However, somebody could apply for such an establishment. And community services staff would have to review their application to see if it's consistent with other allowed uses in the zoning district. For example, somebody could say their medical marijuana establishment is similar to, say, a pharmacy or some other sort of service enterprise. Whatever decision staff made on an individual application could then be appealed to you, the city council, and then you would have to make a decision based on the individual facts and circumstances of that application. To date, staff has received a few but very sporadic inquiries to open medical marijuana facilities, and none recently that I'm aware of. So all of these options do carry some legal risk. The city could be sued for adopting a ban. They could be sued for regulating too strictly. They could be sued for not regulating strictly enough, or for denying somebody a permit on an individual basis. But the policy decision really for you tonight is whether the documented secondary effects that have been identified in the report outweigh a desire to permit medical marijuana establishments that cultivate and distribute marijuana on a larger than individual scale. So that's the issue for you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions, as I indicated the chief is as well.
Any questions of staff, discussion, or action? Mr. Medina?
I was just going to ask if the chief had anything he wanted to add, or if the city attorney's information encompassed everything that he thought was important for the council to hear.
I think the city attorney's covered it very well, and all of the secondary effects, as the city attorney mentioned, are in your staff report.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No questions. Through the chair, Mr. Mayor. When we last set this moratorium in place, I remember you, Mr. Mayor, stating that what your opinion is of this, and I think it's time that we make a statement. I leave it to the council as far as what direction we go, whether we extend a moratorium, but I'd like to put it on record that I'm in favor of an all-out ban on these type of establishments. I've heard enough about the secondary issues, and one thing I haven't heard is I haven't heard anything from patients. So the proposal of coming into San Bruno with this type of establishment is giving me the impression that it's purely for profit, and it's just too much of a risk, and we've got more important things in this town to deal with. So I'd like to make that statement and be in favor with my colleagues as to how we take care of that in the near future.
Through the chair. After doing a lot of review, actually speaking to two folks who are between 18 and 20 who have ID cards to try to better understand and appreciate why they have it, what's the process, how do they acquire it. It's for one particular person, it's for insomnia, the other it's for pain from an auto accident, which indicates to me that obviously the regulation of these medical ID cards are something that I still think I have a concern with. This has come now for the third time to the council. I would agree that to continue the moratorium, I don't know that we have enough information that alters the facts from the existing findings from the chief, that is obviously if that's what the council wishes to do, the majority. The other thing too is it's going to take more time with the community development department, as was indicated, as well as our police department. And at a time when we have issues we need to deal with on the streets, when we have less officers and personnel at that end, I think we need to focus on what's important to this community. And so for those reasons and the information that I've been reading over this last week and other communities and what this is currently, I think a ban would also take care of this issue. I think it's come up for the third time and we need to make a decision. But it also does not discount the ability for future councils or voters to bring this issue back or to modify this decision tonight.
Anyone else? Michael, Irene?
It sounds like sounds like we're ready to make a vote. I don't have anything to add except I agree with you two and good. Okay, so
I don't think it's any secret on how I feel. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we ban direct staff to bring back the necessary resolution to ban dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries.
I'll second.
Motion second on the floor on the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay.